So you've tried to medicate, right? You probably think the biggest hurdle is, a racing mind or maybe some physical discomfort. But for a lot of people, the real challenge is something way more common and honestly a lot less dramatic. Just plain boredom. In this explainer, we're going to dive into why that feeling isn't a sign that you're failing, but actually a really fascinating opportunity. And hey, if you've ever felt that way, you are definitely not alone. This quote comes from a Reddit user, Japersinho, who's been meditating consistently since 2020. They said it was a total game changer for their life, but they still hit that wall of boredom. It's just part of the deal. So let's reframe this whole boredom problem. What if it's not a bug in your practice, but a feature? A critical moment where the real work and the real rewards can actually begin. But to get why, we've got to bust a major myth about what meditation even is in the first place. Okay, so here is the biggest misconception, and it's where so much frustration comes from. The goal of meditation is not to wrestle your mind into submission or force it to be a perfect blank slate. As a monk named Nick Kyomahavong points out, trying to force your thoughts to stop, it just doesn't work. All that does is create more tension. The real practice is way, way gentler than that. It's all about setting the right conditions so your mind can settle down on its own. The classic starting point is called Ānāpānasati, which is just mindfulness of breathing. See, the breath isn't something you have to control. It's just a simple, steady anchor you can come back to whenever your mind starts to wander off. A really brilliant way to think about this is like planting a flower. You can't force a seed to bloom by yanking on it, right? You just create the right conditions. First, you relax your body. That's the rich soil. Then you let go of your worries about the past and future. That's the water. And finally, you just maintain this light, gentle awareness. That's the sunlight. You set up the right environment and the mind just naturally starts to settle. Okay, but let's be real. You can create the perfect conditions, follow all the instructions to a T, and still feel like you're just sitting there, counting the seconds, and feeling totally bored. And this is where the practice gets really interesting, because it turns out there's this deep philosophical debate about what you're actually supposed to do next. Yeah, so the crucial point here is that not everyone agrees on how to handle boredom. We're going to look at two very different schools of thought that came out of a discussion among some really seasoned meditators. Do you lean into the boredom, or do you actively try to transform it into something else? All right, so this breaks down the two main camps. On one side, you've got the embrace it philosophy, argued by a user named Mayana. This view says boredom is just your ego throwing a fit because it's not being entertained. The goal here is to develop equanimity. That's just a calm acceptance by sitting with the feeling. On the other side, you've got the transform it camp, argued by Hydra_bot_7. This view sees boredom as a subtle form of resistance. The goal here is to actively cultivate positive feelings, like joy, to make your mind actually want to be present. And this quote from Mahayana just perfectly nails that embrace a path. Hot boredom is that antsy, restless feeling, when you want to be anywhere else. But if you can just sit with that, you might get to cool boredom, which is the state of calm acceptance, where you've let go of needing the experience to be anything special. You're just there. Okay, so that's the theory, right? Two really interesting philosophies. But what does that actually look like in practice? Let's stock our meditation toolkit with two powerful hands-on techniques, one for the transform it approach and one for the embrace it approach. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you're sitting there and the boredom hits, what can you actually do? Well, instead of just throwing in the towel, you can see it as a cue to pull a specific tool out of your new toolkit. All right, tool number one. This one comes straight from that Transform It playbook. If boredom is this feeling of, oh, I don't want this, then metta, or loving kindness meditation, is like the perfect antidote. Instead of just waiting around for a good feeling to show up, you actively create it. You're intentionally generating this sense of warmth and goodwill. And the way it works is actually pretty cool and systematic. You start by directing phrases like, may I be happy, may I be safe, toward yourself. Then you start expanding that circle of kindness, first to someone you love, then to a neutral person, like a cashier at the store, then to someone you find difficult, and finally, you extend it to all living beings everywhere. It's like a workout for your compassion muscle. And look, this isn't just some ancient mystical thing. We've got modern science to back it up. A study from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley found that people who practiced loving kindness for just 7 weeks reported huge increases in positive emotions and life satisfaction, and they had fewer symptoms of depression. It literally changes your emotional baseline for the better. Okay, on to tool number 2, This one is all about that embrace it philosophy we talked about. This is Vipassanā, or insight meditation. Instead of trying to change the feeling of boredom, you turn your focus right at it. Boredom stops being the problem and becomes the subject of your meditation. You actually get curious about it, like, what is this feeling really? So, a key technique here is something called labeling. It sounds almost too simple, but trust me, it's incredibly powerful. You just mentally note what's happening as it's happening. The point isn't to analyze it or judge it, but just to see it clearly, to get to know the patterns of your own mind without getting carried away by them. So, what does that actually look like when you're sitting there? Well, you feel that restless energy in your legs? Just mentally note restlessness. Your mind drifts off to your grocery list. Thinking. You feel that intense pull to just get up and do something else. Urge. By labeling it, you create this tiny bit of space, and that space lets you watch the feeling instead of being totally consumed by it. So, whether you decide to transform the boredom or investigate it, what's the common thread? You're choosing to stay. And the benefit of learning to sit through that discomfort isn't just about having a calmer mind during meditation. The real payoff, the real magic, happens when you get off the cushion and go live your life. And I just love this reframe from monk Nick Kimahawang. He says to think of it like this. Every time you sit down to meditate, especially when you don't feel like it, you're training yourself to keep your promises to yourself. I mean, with every single session, you're building integrity, you're building self-trust. And he's not just talking theory here. When he started out, he made a deal with himself, just 5 minutes a day. But he had to do it every single day, and he did it. For 365 days straight. It wasn't about meditating for a long time. It was about the consistency. Can you just imagine the kind of confidence and self-respect you'd build by just following through on that one small promise to yourself day in and day out? So, here's a final thought. The next time you're meditating, or honestly, doing anything at all, and that familiar wave of boredom hits, what if you didn't see it as a stop sign? What if it isn't a problem to fix or something to escape from, but an invitation? An invitation to either generate some joy or to just lean in, get curious, and see what's really going on in there.